All right, welcome back. Now, the devastating floods in 33 out of 36 states of the Federation, especially the North, have reportedly claimed 600 lives and over 1 million people have been displaced following the destruction of their homes. Many parts of Nigeria, especially the coastal areas, usually experience flooding yearly, but this year's flood has been described as the worst in more than a decade, as the waters have washed away homes, farmlands and roads. Many communities have also been cut off as a result of this disaster, unable to reach out for help. The flood has washed out the country's food-growing regions, now flooded its oil-producing Niger Delta region. In fact, just recently, the Nigeria NLNG, that's the Nigeria Liquefied Gas Company now, announced that declared a force majeure, as a matter of fact, as a result of this flooding. In fact, what we expect to see is that there's every likelihood that some oil companies may be forced to declare a force majeure, especially if the water does not begin to recede very soon. Although some have blamed the disaster now on the release of excess water from the Lagdo Dam in neighboring Cameroon, authorities say the water released from the dam only contributes 1% to the disaster. Minister of Water Resources Suleiman Adamu, who gave the update, also debunked reports that Nigeria entered into an agreement with Cameroon to build a dam that will mitigate flooding when water from the Lagdo Dam is released. Take a listen now to some of what the minister said.
This year's flood, I can assure you, we cannot blame it on Cameroon, to be sincere. But we can blame them for violating the terms of the MOU. They need to be cooperating with us. We are already together under the auspices of Lake Chad Basin Commission. We are with them. We have signed the Charter on Niger Basin Authority, and they are members. And they ought to be implementing the things that they need to do. So what we have done, what we are going to do this year, we have already started discussing. We are going to review. We are going to call for a review of the MOU. We needed to have more bite so that at least an agreement is an agreement. They must abide by the agreement. But whether we're able to do that in Hausa or not, we'll continue to have floods on the river Nigers and Benue basins until all those tributaries, even when they are damped, there will be, because the other component that I have not mentioned is that for hundreds of years we have been deforesting our land, we've been degrading our land. And what has been happening is that when the rains come, they carry a lot of sediment into the rivers, and most of our rivers are already silted up.
Well, let's discuss the impact of this flooding disaster further and try to understand what exactly is going on. Joining me to discuss this further is environmentalist Desmond Maja-Kodumi. He joins us from another part of Lagos via Skype. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Let me start by asking you, what exactly are we seeing at the moment? This is something we've not seen before. The flooding this year is horrible. 33 out of the country's 36 states are affected. The number may even go up. And as we speak, it is still raining. And we've been warned that, people should expect more flooding, even in areas that are not flooded at the moment. What is going on?
Very, very deep question. What is going on is actually something that we have been warned about over 40 years ago. Scientists from the World Meteorological Organization told us very, very clearly that if we continue the massive pollution of the atmosphere that we've been doing, that is causing global warming, we would have climate change. And one of the major manifestations of climate change is exactly this: much heavier rainfall. When you have 3 weeks or sometimes even 4 weeks rain, in some cases 3 months rain falling in one day, it's going to overwhelm whatever system is in place. Even the natural systems will be overwhelmed. And as the minister rightly said, we have been tampering with the natural systems far too much. Massive deforestation. The forests, the trees have a crucial role to play. The root zone of those trees, they keep the soil stable and prevent erosion. When you now remove the trees, no roots, you have erosion, you have sand falling, going into the streams, into the rivers, raising the riverbed so that the river has a less ability to carry the water that it would normally be able to carry. We're messing with nature. In fact, what's going on is that we've been hitting nature for too long, too hard. And she's now hitting us back. It's known, by the way, as the law of retribution. In some cases, they call it the law of karma. In science, it is called Newton's third law. Every action begets a reaction. We've been just abusing nature, and she's hitting us back. This is just one of the manifestations, you know, and we better learn to live, to adjust our lifestyle, because we could see a lot worse. As bad as this is, we could see a lot worse.
I mean, you look at some of the communities affected, like some of the visuals we were showing while you were talking now. You look at most of these communities affected. There would appear to be coastal communities that are close to riverine areas. Look at this place, for instance. This is Anambra State, and this community is close to the River Niger. Is it that people should not have built houses around these areas in the first place, and that something should have been done to, you know, to prevent developments around these areas? So what exactly is it? Because just help us understand this.
Yeah, that's a very astute observation. Definitely, those rivers have what they call floodplains, because in days gone by, there are certain seasons of the planet, certain years, where you will have a little bit more heat because of the planet's location, and that heat will cause more evaporation and have more rain. So you will have floods, and there are those areas that are close to the rivers, which are known as the floodplains. Definitely, the people who built houses there, they should have been advised not to. In fact, they shouldn't have been allowed to do it, because we know there are floodplains. Just because you didn't see any flood for 4 or 5 years doesn't mean that the flood won't come. There's a history of those areas flooding. It's very unfortunate. And this is the price that we're paying for this lack of responsibility in terms of, you know, some of the people responsible for making the decisions in governance.
Now, how bad can this get for us? I mean, as we speak today, communities have been wiped off. We do not know. There's no sign that the water is receding. We have there's forecast of more rain to come. How bad can this get? How soon do you think we can begin to see some kind of respite?
Yeah. I mean, it's horrific. You know, one's heart just goes out to these people. Wow, the last thing you expect, you wake up in the morning and water is just rising. You end up on your rooftop. If you can't swim, you're in trouble. They lost a lot of lives. It is bad, and it could get a little bit worse. Luckily, the good news is that we are approaching the end of our normal rainy season. Because of this climate change, it could extend a little bit longer, and we might even get a little bit more flooding. But the good news is that by the end of the year, the waters will definitely recede, the waters will go back, and in the new year, you'll definitely have dry land on those floodplains, because all these waters, they're flowing towards the ocean, and eventually they will empty out in the ocean. So that's the good news. But the bad news is that I can categorically tell you that the floods will come back. And I'm not making any prophetic announcement. I'm just basing this on scientific fact, scientific reality. Remember, I said earlier that scientists had warned us 40 years ago that this sort of thing would happen. They made a slight error, though. They said 40 years ago that it would happen in 50 years. But they projected a little bit too conservatively. It happened 10 years earlier than they had anticipated. And around 2010, 2012, 2013, the World Meteorological Department, by that time, the United Nations had a department called the International Panel for Climate Change. It was linked up to hundreds of scientists all over the world, and the data was far more accurate now. And that's when they started panicking on a global level, because they started saying, we're upsetting the balance of what has been a perfect system. Remember, my brother, that this planet Earth is the only sphere in the cosmos that we have been able to identify that has the capacity to sustain and support life. Okay, and we've seen millions of planets all over. The ones that are close to us, we've known that for a long time. The moon, Mars, Venus, Saturn, all those ones, Pluto, they can't support life. The planet Earth can support life because of the incredible complexity that has been put into her design. Just the atmosphere alone, the complexity and the beauty of that atmosphere that allows sun rays to come in, and then it lets a lot of the rays that bring the heat, which are called the infrared rays, to bounce out, but keeps a certain amount of heat because there's a certain ratio of what they call greenhouse gases. So the planet has a specific warmth in her temperature. All these things, along with a myriad of other things, makes this a habitable planet. However, for the last 100 years or so, humanity has been messing with the atmosphere by pumping millions and millions and millions of tons of these greenhouse gases, particularly the CO2, into the atmosphere. And it's been upsetting that balance. The Earth has been trapping more heat, and it's very simple science. You know, you learn it from your mother's kitchen. Apply heat to water, the water evaporates. More heat, more evaporation, more rain. So, yeah, it's going to come back unless we do what needs to be done, and do it urgently.
And it's good you just pointed this out, because usually what we've seen in this country is that when a flooding situation like this happens and it goes away, we tend to forget. We go back to our normal lives. People go back to constructing buildings, for instance, on floodplains, and then wait until the next flood comes around before they begin to complain. But you look at the response in Nigeria so far. How would you rate it?
It was very sluggish at first. I think people were in a little bit of denial, possibly because it wasn't put out there on the front burner by the media organizations like yours is doing and has been doing. And so the response was a bit too sluggish. And when you're slow responding to those kind of emergencies, you know, you affect a lot of people's lives. You lose lives. There's an increase in the response. Some of the state governors have, seem to be doing quite a bit, not as much as some of us would like them to do. You know, if you're a really responsible civil servant, and that's the job description, you're a servant to the civilians, and you now see that this is what's happening, and you deploy all your resources. If it means foregoing 50% or even all of your allowances and the allowances of your legislatures and so on, and start amassing all kinds of relief materials for the people, that's what you do. And it's a lesson that they need to learn, because leadership is a massive responsibility, and the onus is on you, the leader who is making those decisions, because those decisions that you make can affect the lives of millions of people. And if you affect those lives for the good, then guess what? According to the cosmic laws of scripture, the cosmic laws of physics, the good comes back to you. But if you don't do the right thing, the pain comes back to you. So we better wake up to the reality that you do the right thing. If you are a leader and you've been put into that position to lead people, then you better lead them in a way that is sacrificial to you.
One last question for you, sir. You are in Lagos. I am in Lagos as well. And we know Lagos is a coastal city. How concerned should we, those of us in Lagos here, how concerned should we be about this situation, this flooding situation happening across the country? Of course, Lagos has not been badly affected, as we have seen with other states like Anambra State, Benue States, and all of that. But that is not to say we're immune, sort of. We know we've had situations of flooding in some part of the city here, and the government has even warned that people should move away from some areas. But how vulnerable are we in this city?
We are very vulnerable in Lagos. Lagos has been classified as one of the more vulnerable cities in the world for the climate change, because we have the ocean, we have lakes, we have lagoons, we have rivers, estuaries. It's a vulnerable city, and it's a low-lying city as well. We need to be very, very concerned and do the right thing for Lagos. There are certain adaptive measures that can be done. We can protect our coast. We've done it partially, a little bit in a part of Lagos, but we need to protect the whole coast all the way down to the next state, and then they should take it up there. There are things that can be done, but they need to be done very, very urgently. In fairness to the Lagos state government, they have been quite proactive, but one of the things that they need to do very, very quickly is ensure that the wetlands, the mangrove areas, a lot of that mangrove area has to be preserved. You cannot sacrifice it on the altar of profitability, and then you now destroy that thing which was put there that is one of the most perfect flood relief systems. It's a natural flood relief, and we have not that much mangrove. A lot of it is being sandfilled, but recently I heard that there's some very, very overt moves from the state government to ensure that the mangroves will not be sandfilled. This should not just be talk. They need to walk the talk. Action to protect the city, the great city of Lagos.
Desmond Maje-Kodunmi, thank you very much for talking to us, and thank you for your insights.
My pleasure, and I hope you don't have to use your swimming abilities sometime in the near future.
Thank you so very much. All right, that's how much we can take on the program this week. We thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.